everyone to EVTN, your source for news, and we have some good news stories today. As I said last week, there weren't a whole lot, and this week it didn't seem like there were a whole lot up until, just a few days ago. So there's some interesting stuff, and obviously Strickland news is the big news. I'll get to that in a little bit. But other than that, there is some news that you may have missed. So I'm here to bring that to you. So the October Synodal preview. In advance of a pivotal October Assembly on Synodality, a new Vatican document was released Tuesday. The text, referred to as Instrumentum Laboris, or working tool for the upcoming 16th Ordinary General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops, signals the beginning of a new phase of the Church's multi-year Synod on Synodality. Among the priorities outlined in the document is the role of women in the Church. One of the worksheets included a text. Included with the text proposes the following question for discernment. Most of the continental assemblies in the synthesis of several episcopal conferences call for the question of women's inclusion in the diaconate to be considered. Is it possible to envisage this, and in what way? The Synod document also proposes the following as suggestions for prayer and preparatory reflection. How can we create spaces? Okay, so this is really important. Follow along here. How can we create spaces where those who feel hurt by the Church and unwelcomed by the community feel recognized, received, free to ask questions, and not judged? In light of the post-synodal apostolic exhortation Mors Laetitia, what concrete steps are needed to welcome those who feel excluded from the Church because of their status or sexuality? For example, remarried divorcees, people in polygamous marriages, LMNOPQ plus people, etc. So, what concrete steps are needed to welcome those who feel excluded from the Church? So they feel excluded. And so how do we welcome them? Because this synod is all about the LMNOPQ plus agenda. I mean, that's very clear. Another question recommended for prayer and reflection refers to the discipline of priestly celibacy. As the quote is, as some continents propose, could a reflection be opened concerning the discipline on access to the priesthood for married men, at least in some areas, the document asks. Well, and I mean, we already have married deacons, and so naturally, the modernists are going to open that up to a married priesthood. Still another question asks, what stimuli from indigenous, minority, and oppressed cultures can help us rethink our decision-making processes? So basically, what can we learn from the pagans and heretics? You know what you can learn from the pagans and heretics? Nothing. We can learn, one thing we can learn from this synodal process is that it is rotten. This is the working document, and that's what we're faced with, this rotten synodal synod. And really, I think with the Amazon Synod, it seemed like they were too obvious. And I think Francis kind of shut that down, and the Germans got disappointed. But I think because a lot of people were saying about the Amazon Synods, there were a lot of people that were really outraged about the pagan idol worship in the Vatican at the Amazon Synod. And people were, kind of hyping it up, saying this is heresy, there's going to be a lot of heresy, and then all of a sudden it's like a pagan idol just came out of nowhere, and but it really caused a lot of outrage, even amongst the like the normies, normies or whatever you want to call them, the Novus Ordo conservatives. They got really, there's a lot of outrage amongst them too. Even most of them basically said, yeah, there's something kind of crazy about that. And then, but I guess the Amazon Synod, my point was, the Amazon Synod was kind of blatant. There was gonna be, the goal was supposed to be married priests and women priests, women deacons, whatever. And that didn't actually happen. And I think Pope Francis put a stop to that and kind of kicked the can down the road. And this is where it went, the Synodal Synod. Now, what's the goal of this? I mean, what? Because we could obviously see the goal of the Amazon Synod, but the goal of this, the Synodal Synod on Synodality, it's just so stupid. It doesn't even mean anything. But it seems like the goal has something to do with LMNOPs. We can't be completely sure though, because it's I mean, it's basically like, oh, we're listening to the people on the margins. Well, you've marginalized traditionalists, but you won't listen to them because they're rigid. But you'll listen to the pagans and the heretics. In fact, they were the ones that Pope Francis and the synodal organizers wanted to speak at the synods. They didn't want Catholics to share their opinions. They wanted these pagans and heretics and atheists and LMNOPs and the whole what would you say? Oh, the whole crowd. But I would say, so what I've heard is that certainly there will be married priesthood that will come from this synod, certainly. Maybe something worse, who knows. Okay, Wester. Archbishop Wester spoke at the concluding Mass for Father James Martin's Outreach 2023 conference. And he said, at the Mass, there is a prayer. Pray then, my sisters and brothers, and all God's children, that my sacrifice and yours may be acceptable. Okay, but let me repeat that. Pray then, my sisters and brothers. Okay, so that's actually not in the text. That's an intentional distortion of the text. So does that make the Mass not licit? I don't know. I mean, obviously it was supporting a sin, so it probably wasn't licit in the first place. But he said, my sisters and brothers and all God's children, to the people that don't identify as a sister or brother. Isn't that pretty scandalous? But this is Wester from New Mexico, and if he were a little bit younger, I would expect him to be named a cardinal. And I don't know. I mean, it's even possible now, because he's pretty bad. I don't know if he's worse than McElroy, but he's definitely part of that crowd, for sure. The ones who, obviously, he supports LMNOP sins, because he's at this mockery of a Mass. But I would expect Stowe to get named a cardinal before Wester. But Wester's old, he's almost 75, so who knows? Maybe Francis will try to extend that a little bit. Try to extend his reign of terror a little bit, but I don't know. I think there's few and far between. Like, I think the modernists in the hierarchy, well, not the hierarchy, but like to choose from amongst the priests, I don't know. It seems like there's slim pickings, I guess is what they say. Because now the LMNOPs, they don't want to be priests. They would rather do their own thing and be highly endorsed by modern culture. In Germany, 2 women dressed in an alb carried a monstrance with a humeral veil at the Corpus Christi procession on June 8th. This is in Lindenstein, Essen Diocese in Germany. There were 2 priests present. No, they weren't women, although who knows if they identified as women. But the parish website, St. Medardus.org, called this a new achievement. But this kind of abuse has been tolerated for years in all German-speaking countries, the Netherlands and beyond. So obviously it's outrageous. But how is it any different than female Eucharistic ministers? Just food for thought. People are outraged at this, but are they outraged at women handing out communion? Just think about that. Okay. Chad Scharf, who used to work as the vice president for software engineering for vice president of a software engineering company at the password management company Bitwarden, was fired for putting as his preferred pronouns assigned by God. Scharf began working for the company in 2020, 1 year before the company-wide inclusivity efforts were initiated. Along with other employees, Scharf was pressured by the company to add pronouns to his Slack profile, and he chose those in conformity with his religious belief assigned by God. When asked to remove the preferred pronouns, he refused to contradict his Catholic faith and argued that Bitwarden's policies and practices discriminated against his religion. So, there you go. Now, he obviously made his point, and if the company asked him to remove the preferred pronouns, clearly he won the battle. But he refused to do that, and so he was fired. But I think if we are a little bit sarcastic, a little bit push back a little bit against this nonsense, then I think they'll back down, and that's kind of what this shows. He was asked to remove the preferred pronouns. Okay, well, you win. You won because they asked you to remove. They pressured you to have them in the first place, and then you didn't want them, and then yeah, just do something really sarcastic, All right, so now the story. Everyone's tuned in for Bishop Strickland. Vatican's dicastery for bishops has undertaken an apostolic visitation to the Diocese of Tyler, Texas, to investigate Bishop Strickland. The apostolic visitation is an official review of diocesan leadership and governance, usually convened at the behest of a Vatican congregation. One priest interviewed said the visitation's questions focused on Strickland's administrative leadership in the diocese rather than his social media personality. The priest said it was not even primarily about his rants about Pope Francis, so clearly the priest is anti-Bishop Strickland, which is disgusting, but the priest requested anonymity because he was not authorized to speak on record. So he's against Bishop Strickland, and he's not authorized to speak, and so he does anyway. All right, excellent. He said the questions really focused on years of governance issues which have had us priests concerned. Oh, I'm sure you're concerned about his governance, right? Or maybe you're concerned about the Catholic faith. Namely, you're undermining the Catholic faith because you hate it. Anyway, he said we had 2 finance officers removed before their 5-year terms were expired, and that's not typical at all. Really? So this priest is sticking his nose in the business that he has no business in. Here's the thing. Do priests have oversight of the finance department in a diocese? No, clearly not. And so this priest is just making stuff up. It's very clear. A priest who was questioned during the visitation said the interviewers are already asking questions about who might be a good fit to replace Strickland. So the decision has been made. Strickland's gone. Not officially, but they're going to get rid of him. At least that's what the Vatican wants to do. The bishops who conducted the visitation are reportedly Bishop Gerald Kikanis, Emeritus of Tucson, and Bishop Dennis Sullivan of Camden. Kikanis has been tied to, and I thought I had this in here, but obviously not. He has been tied to Bernardine, Cardinal Bernardine of Chicago, former Cardinal of Chicago. who is notoriously supportive of LMNOPs. So they're clearly not going to get Catholic bishops to do this stuff. Now, sadly, I think there will be a lot of outrage if Strickland is removed, and it seems like he could be. But the problem is, I don't think anything's actually going to happen, because then the Vatican will name a bishop to Tyler, Texas. He'll never speak about anything. He'll probably be paid, bribed to keep his mouth shut. And he'll never say anything at any USCCB meeting. And the Vatican will be happy with that. Meanwhile, the people will rage on Twitter for a few days, and then after that, nothing will happen, because we can't do anything. What we could do is contact our bishops. If this does happen, so be prepared. Don't be caught off guard. You've heard it here first. I've said for a while I'm surprised that he hasn't been removed, but if he is removed, then contact your bishop and say, what is the bishop's opinion on the unjust removal of Bishop Strickland from his diocese? Do you support Bishop Strickland? Do you support what he stands for? Your Excellency, do you support pro-life? Do you oppose the marriage of two men or two women or two people that you don't even know what they are? I don't know. I think we need to ask our bishops these questions and say, well, since he's been kicked out and no one's standing up for him, who's going to take his place? Because remember, his claim to fame originally was he criticized fellow bishops who invited James Martin to speak in their diocese. And that got him some popularity amongst the laity. Really a big following, actually. It would send shockwaves through the United States. Then people would realize Pope Francis, there are a lot of people who are still defending Pope Francis, but it'd be indefensible, really. This would be an indefensible move. And hopefully it would wake up more people. I mean, what's going to wake them up? If Pope Francis has a pagan idol in the Vatican? Oh, wait. If Pope Francis bans your Mass? Oh, wait. If Pope Francis comes up with a terrible Vatican-China deal, if he appoints predators to high positions in the Vatican, anyway. Strickland's got an interview very shortly, or Strickland received this visitation very shortly after he protested LMNOP nuns. But it has to do with governance issues in his diocese. Oh, yeah. I don't believe that at all. Okay. This year's Eucharist, marking the friendship between Knights of Columbus of North Dakota, USA, and Manitoba, Canada, will be presided over in a Masonic auditorium on the grounds of the International Peace Garden, which covers both U.S. and Canadian territory. Did you hear that? In a Masonic auditorium. The July 7th Eucharist will be presided over by Winnipeg Archbishop Richard Gagnon. Gagnon? Yeah. And I think it's Gagnon. Gagnon. Yeah, Gagnon. Anyway, an archdiocesan official told the Pillar that Gagnon originally thought that the Eucharist would be held outdoors. Previously, the Eucharist was celebrated in a tent in the park or in a music auditorium. The Masonic auditorium was built by the Grand Lodges of Manitoba and North Dakota in the shape of a Masonic square and a compass logo. It seats approximately 2,000 people. So if this archbishop knew that, and he thought it would be held outdoors, why is he saying Mass in this Masonic auditorium? He's literally an archbishop. You know what he can say? No, I'm not celebrating it there. That's so easy. What does he think? What is his problem? What is this guy? And the Knights of Columbus, this is absolutely a disgrace. Completely a disgrace. The Knights of Columbus, I thought they were founded to combat the Masons. It's absolutely pathetic and embarrassing. There's no excuse for this. And the Archbishop, what a pathetic excuse. What a pathetic excuse for an Archbishop. We'll see if he says it or not. If he does, shame on him. And really, he should be excommunicated, because I thought that's what happened. I thought that's what happened to Catholics who were Masons. Are you supporting Freemasons if you say a mass inside a Masonic temple? All right. Anyway, that's pathetic. Just embarrassing. All right. Here's some news, and I do want to take this opportunity to kind of pat myself on the back. About a month ago, I don't know, maybe a month and a half, I don't know, a while ago, I did a live stream video where I talked about bishops retiring and people, archbishops who were retiring and bishops who could be taking their place. Pope Francis appointed Bishop Christopher Coyne as a coadjutor Archbishop of Hartford on Monday. As coadjutor, Coyne will assist Archbishop Leonard Blair in the administration of the Hartford Archdiocese. This is Connecticut, I believe. Hartford, Connecticut. And should succeed him as Archbishop upon his retirement, expected once Blair turns 75 next year. So Francis isn't even waiting. He's done this. He did this with Archbishop Thomas Tobin, who was known as, or Bishop Thomas Tobin, who was known as the Good Tobin. He immediately replaced him. He had a coadjutor, so basically this guy was taking his place a year before he was retiring. And he's been doing that more and more. Pope Francis is really seeing the end. He can feel it, and so he's acting really quickly in case the new person isn't as hostile towards the Catholic faith. He's trying to set his mark, make his mark. And Coyne, I called this on the video. Coyne has led the Diocese of Burlington, Vermont since 2015. As a Bishop of Burlington, Coyne removed an unjabbed pastor from his parish in 2022 for refusing to wear one of these things and to be regularly tested for the virus. He removed a pastor for crimes against the virus church. Coyne is a Biden bishop. And so I said it's a possibility he could be moved to Boston or Hartford. I called it. I mean, I guess if you throw enough darts at the dartboard, eventually something's going to hit it. But this is one of the ones where I was, I'd predicted correctly. Now, the big prediction is Stowe getting a promotion. Bishop Stowe, one of possibly the worst bishop in the United States. The Archbishop position of Cincinnati is going to be vacant pretty soon. And so I expect Stowe will get that one. If not, then Detroit. There's plenty in that region, and several in the Midwest as well that are coming up. And there may be a open bishop position in Tyler, Texas as well pretty soon. And again, really, does anything in the Francis Church surprise you? I mean, come on, they're talking about polygamy. I mean, they don't like anything in the Old Testament, but polygamy is okay. LMNOP activity, oh, well, that was the Old Testament. That doesn't apply anymore. But polygamy, oh, well, how can we accompany people in polygamous marriages? Really? Are you serious? Or is this just for the indigenous pagans? Where are the feminists in this? Do they think polygamy is okay, or is it like women that marry multiple men? I don't know. But there's no really no semblance of natural law in the Francis Church. It's just everything goes, anything goes, except tradition. Yeah. Vatican II sect doing what it does is all. High Captain. Moral fortitude is a gift of the Holy Spirit. Thanks for joining us in the live chat. St. Anthony Padua Rad Trad Apologetics. Thanks. Yes, they'll probably replace him with a new bishop by the name James Martin. Maybe he is a Mason. I think if James Martin is named a bishop, he'd be working in the Vatican. I'm sure he'd be very welcome there. He already is. He's been there quite a bit. Pope Francis sends him synodal letters of support. So that's just what we're dealing with, and until we can get a Catholic pope, that's unfortunately where we'll be at. But even if we got a pope that wasn't 100% Catholic, they could still be a lot more favorable to the trads. I mean, you saw what Benedict did, and I'm not saying that he wasn't Catholic. It's he was kind of stuck. He was kind of trapped because he was one of the architects of Vatican II. And so it was kind of like the sunk cost fallacy where you have to kind of stay with something. He just had like a natural attachment to it because if you look at the facts, then he would have had to admit that he failed. Or, well, I don't know that he failed, but, his ideas failed. And quite drastically, if you look at the numbers. It kind of slams you in the face. Like, it's not really debatable. But he kind of came up with his, sort of middle ground type of thing, like a compromise where, yeah, the old Mass is good, new Mass isn't as good. But mutual enrichment. So the Novus Ordo can be enriched by a priest who says the Latin Mass. And then the Latin Mass can be enriched by a priest who says the Novus Ordo. Well, one of those two is true. Anyway, that's it. I guess there will be a lot of rants about Strickland. See what happens, but I don't expect him to back down. Now, what someone told me was that it's entirely possible these bishops appointed by the Vatican came in and told him either shut your mouth or your staff your entire diocesan staff is going to be fired, or you'll lose funding or something. So we'll see, but Strickland's not one to back down, so maybe he'll fire another finance director. Who is it that was fired? The finance officers. Maybe they'll have another finance officer fired, and then that'll be the work of the Vatican. I don't know. There's a number of conspiracies that you could dream up, and how many of them actually will happen and how many won't. I don't really know the answer to that. But I have to say, check out my video from several weeks ago about open bishop positions that will be opening up. Because I did some research, and I give you, at the very least, you can see a list of which bishops will be retired in the next 2 years. There's, I think, at least 8 archbishop positions that are coming open in the next 2 years. So there's going to be a lot of movement in the United States of other bishops to those archbishop spots. And yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. We are the laity, and we will not be silent.